Woo! Oh, there we go. The numbers just turned red. The light is on. We haven't mentioned the light in the last few episodes. It almost became a character on the show there for a while. We've mentioned it every episode. Wow, you guys got us kind of pre-production in here. Oh, getting the mic ready, getting the headphones on. The headphones always like with the bean on top of the hat, you know? There's a name for that. I forget what it's called.
Thought it was just a button.
A button, a bean, I don't know. Here we are again, back in the studio, me and Mr. Tango himself. Tango, how you doing this evening?
Fantastic. Spent some time recently with our previous guest, Bo Brown.
Congressional candidate in the 14th district.
Yeah.
Cool. So he had an event tonight.
He did. Down here in Rome. Rome.
It was in Rome.
We can say Rome.
Somewhere. We're around, yeah.
We're in the neighborhood, down at a local place doing a veteran meet and greet. Fantastic turnout. Definitely a great opportunity to get the word out and kind of talk to people. Had his wife out there with him, and it was just a fantastic showing of support from the community.
Awesome. Good for Bo, man. I'm excited. He's making some waves. I was hoping it would work out for him, but it seems like it is working out. And we got a little bit of a pop because they're talking about Bo in a CNN article, and they link back to the episode of the podcast that he was on, and I was just downright giddy about that. I got to be honest. So, you know, that's what we had hoped for. And he was like, hey, let me come on your podcast. I was like, well, I was about to ask you to come on. So it worked out for both of us. But
it did. The dude's out there wanting the work.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I implore anyone, hey, put your congressman to work.
Yeah.
Not just my guy.
Right.
Put
right.
everybody to work.
Yeah.
That's what they're for.
That was a point. I was talking to John Cowan when he was running initially against Marjorie Taylor Greene. And he was like, I'm going to represent everybody, even the people that don't vote for me. And that's true, whether the people that don't vote for you like it or not, like you're still their representative. And I hadn't thought about it that way. I thought about the people that vote for you like you, and you're their congressman. And that's awesome. But like you really do represent everybody, and you know, it is what it is. And I feel like he's going to be a guy that's going to do that and devote himself to the district.
So the way I look at it is I'm going to call a plumber to deal with the plumbing situation.
Right.
I want my congressman to work like that plumber and be like, hey, dude, you're here to work for everybody.
Yeah, show up when I need you.
You don't get to just do whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is the way it should be, and you'd like to see more of those folks do that because that's what we hire them to do when we send them to Washington. But, you know, it doesn't always go that way.
It is. And, you know, we had a great conversation at one point, me and some of the individuals involved with the event about, you know, the future, the kids.
Yeah, the kids.
And how homeschooling's going for them.
Well, that's Bo's a homeschool parent. His family, they're a homeschool family. My family is a homeschool family. That's what we're going to talk about. It was a fantastic segue. You act like you've done this a few times before. That was good. So we're talking about homeschooling tonight. There was a little bit of a ruckus in I guess maybe it's still ongoing, a little bit of a ruckus in our community lately here in Floyd County, Georgia, because the local school superintendent, the county school superintendent, Dr. Glenn White, said in an email to a parent that he doesn't recommend that anybody enroll their kids in a homeschool program. Are we still going? Okay. Because he'd never seen one that was effective before in educating kids. Okay, so I'm going to stick a pin in that, and we'll come back to that in a second. I'm going to go back to the scriptures. We talked about, you know, getting back to our why in the last episode, and this having been a faith-based program in its inception and pulling it back around to that. So we're going to start with some scripture tonight. Proverbs 22:6 says, train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. So that's the way that homeschool parents think about homeschooling, what that is. It's part of raising their kid. It's not just making sure they learn the hard math or the important facts or whatever. When we do that too, contrary to what a lot of folks might believe, those things still happen. But it's also about raising. I always tell people, and I work for an organization now that is focused on building godly men in the next generation out of children, out of young boys. But I always say that we're not raising kids, and people's jaws drop when you say, well, what are you raising if you think you're not raising a kid? Well, we're raising adults. You know, they're children for a fraction of their life, and they're adults for the majority of their life as the life cycle goes. So that's the idea, is to raise men, to raise women, not to raise kids. You know, you let them be kids and they play and they eat dirt and they do the things that kids do. But hopefully in 10, 15, 20, 50 years, they're not still eating dirt and, doing TikTok dances or whatever. So the idea is to build these people up. We've talked about this before. If you go way back to episode 84, before there was video, I did an episode called Homeschool Dad, and I talked about when we initially took our kids out of school to start homeschooling them. And then episode 116, I had Miss Christine Focus on, who is like final form homeschool mom. She's got 3 boys, and they're fantastic human beings. The entire Focus family is just awesome. Great folks. Their kids are doing awesome things. Their 2 oldest boys are, in fact, enrolled in college right now and excelling at that. One of them is a college athlete, which means that a homeschool kid can be a college athlete and go to college. They're like, it's harder. That's stupid. We'll get into that in a little bit. It's tougher for homeschool kids to go to college. They don't want whatever. We'll debunk that too. But I'll probably end up talking about some of the things that I talked about in 84 and in 116 again. But in 2020, we had the COVID deal, right? And I had what amounted to like a loose job offer. I was working in public school at the time, and I was approached by the organization that I work for now, and they was like, hey, there's a possibility that you'll have this job. This job's coming open. We want you to do it. I was like, okay, cool. So I was going to do that. And I was just going to stay at school until that time came up. Then my wife gets COVID. This was August of 20. So we had already done the summer, and we got out, in March and didn't go back. So my wife gets COVID the first week of school. And our county policy was that I had to go home for 14 days, whether I had COVID or not, just because somebody in my house had it. So I did. I went home for 14 days. And I just decided that was going to be it. And I think I ended up going back for a few days and kind of like working a notice or whatever. But they didn't even replace me, so that didn't matter as it turned out. But I left my job in public school to homeschool our kids because I was a public school employee and my wife was a nurse. So the math was easy in terms of whose income we could live without. So that's what we did. And I always thought it was interesting. One of my colleagues asked me if it was a religious decision. It's not a coincidence that colleague has been on this program before. But he asked me if it was a religious thing. And I told him not entirely. I mean, it was something my wife and I had talked about, but we felt like it was a better option for our kids. Having been in the system, I worked in public school for 13 years as an employee, and I was a substitute teacher, I think for 4 years before that. So I'd been around and I'd seen it and I'd done it. And I worked for the superintendent that I mentioned earlier, Dr. Glenn White, when he was the principal at my school. I've been in 100 meetings with that dude and had conversations with him about, all the stuff, because that's just what we did in public school. But nobody else ever asked me. This one guy asked me if it was a religious thing. Nobody else ever asked me why. Why would you leave your job in public school and take your kids out with you? My kids didn't go to school at all that year. I went the first day of school. Jessica found out she had COVID, and then after that, I had to sit out for 2.5 weeks or whatever it ended up being in terms of school days. But they didn't go at all that year because we'd already decided we were going to make homeschool happen one way or another. But nobody ever asked me why.
So they weren't in public school at all.
Not in fall of 20. They were not.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
we had already decided that they could. You know, my parents lived next door. Jessica's parents were just up the road, and everybody's retired, and you know, in both those houses, and our kids could just hang out all day, and then we would do school in the afternoons, evenings when neither one of us were working or one of us was off or whatever. But so we were just gonna make it happen. But nobody has ever been like, "Hey, why'd you take your kids out of school?" We didn't think it. We thought it was best for them. And we didn't just think it was best for them because we thought that was what's best for them. We thought that the public school system was not working for them or for a bunch of other kids. And we didn't want our kids to be in that anymore. I had seen it all. I was a special ed paraprofessional. And what I did was go into regular ed classrooms with students who were intelligent enough to do the work. They just had maybe a behavior issue or needed help focusing or being reminded of things or helping with their, organizational skills and things like that. And I would help them keep up with their books or make sure they had a pen in class, or in some cases they weren't sticking a fork in a light socket or whatever. So that was what I did. So I got to see all of the things. I got to be in all the different types of classrooms and work with all the different types of teachers. And I'll say, I don't want this to sound like I'm attacking teachers, because those guys just have to play the hand they're dealt. They have to operate within the system. There are a lot of those guys that I love. I'm friends with a bunch of them still. I stay in communication with. Matter of fact, I was talking to the teacher that I referenced a second ago who asked me the question. He's a fantastic dude. But there are public school teachers. My daughter spent the night, at a public school teacher's house a few weeks ago. Like, it's just not there. There's some fantastic folks. There's some lousy ones. There's some awful ones. and I know some of those too. But I know some fantastic teachers that are fantastic humans, and they do a great job with, the hand they're dealt in public school. And there's certain things that you have to do and certain things that you're not allowed to do. And they just got to work with that. But that's kind of where the line gets drawn between the factory model of education, where you stand in line and raise your hand and ask permission to go pee-pee, and then you got, homeschooling or unschooling is becoming a thing. Have you heard of unschooling?
No.
So unschooling, I ain't sure about unschooling. There's probably some merit there, and I can't just poo-poo it because I don't know, and I wouldn't just make an ignorant statement based on something that I have no idea about. But it's more along the lines of just kind of allowing your kid to live life and letting them find out things, right? And just be around. Maybe dad runs his own business, so he's with dad all day, and he's learned how to be a plumber and how to do his taxes and how to operate a business and do a payroll. And
okay, so this is going to sound terrible, but it's like caveman schooling.
Yeah.
Like, you take your kids with you and they shadow what's happening.
They just do life with you.
Life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a lot of homeschooling also.
Unschooling to me sounded immediately off the top of my brain like it was like, oh, it's a way of unbrainwashing kids from that mentality of sit still, sit in a box. That's fair too. Raise your hands, ask to go potty.
Right.
Brother, that doesn't happen in reality. Nobody's going to be like, you got to raise your hand and get a hall pass and go to the bathroom.
Right, yeah.
I work in manufacturing. If one of my guys came up and said, hey, can I go to the bathroom? Brother, you're an adult.
You're
you
30
pay
years
taxes.
old. Go to the bathroom.
You are a 40-year-old man.
Yeah. But that's what it is. You're kind of, in unschooling, you're just learning life, and there's a lot of merit in being able to do some math. There's some good stuff about that, and being able to read and do research and things like that. But there's an environment that you can create where your kid's going to learn how to do that anyway.
Yeah.
We started a business for Ayla in August. We didn't know how to start a business. We took a bunch of research, and we had to figure this stuff out, and she got to learn that stuff along with us. And my dad has always run his own business. So she's gotten to pick his brain and be like, hey, when you were first starting, did you do this or did you do that? Or how did you, whatever. So you just learn by experience a lot of times.
To me, before we started rolling, full clarification, we did have some conversations about this.
Yeah.
Now I'm thinking back on it and I'm like, oh, that was something I learned because I'm a public school child, unfortunately. I am not an advocate for public school for several reasons, but when I think about it, I'm like, oh yeah, that was silly for us to have to sit there and be told, no, you can't use a calculator. You need to learn it this way. You need to learn certain
You won't always have a calculator with you, right?
I was told that
as I hold up my phone.
Up till the day I graduated, probably in 2014.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, no. You'll never have a calculator in your pocket. Turns out, real life, I have a laptop and a phone and an iPad sitting next to me at work. I have the information of the entire internet available to me.
Yeah.
So I think it's silly, some of the things that were like structured in public school.
Right.
As to, I did do a little bit of homeschooling, and I remember learning about that. And I've spent enough time with you, and you're a very intelligent individual who's kind of really proficient in quite a few topics and subjects. So like, I fully trust you to teach kids at this point and be like, oh yeah, those guys are going to be well adjusted. But then I look at your daughter and she's got everything right now. She's figured it out. She's running a business successfully.
Yeah.
She's
17
years old, going through life. But when I look at how public school was, a lot of individuals had no self-worth going through that. Yeah. And I look at Ayla and she's like, nah, I'm a straight baller. Granted, she's also a jiu-jitsu killer.
Yeah, she can fight, and that helps.
She can fight, but she has that self-worth.
Yeah.
A lot of people, when they leave public school, are like, what the heck do I do now?
That's the thing, and I'll just be completely transparent about this because I don't think she'll mind. She didn't when we took her out of school, which is a big reason why we took her out of school, because she didn't have the self-worth. Like she was struggling, like going through it. And, she had some personal issues already, some things where the deck was kind of stacked against her in a lot of ways. But then she gets around these other 6th grade girls, and girls are nasty. And they'll just tell you, you ought to just go home and kill yourself. Like, they'll just say it. Yeah. Whether it's in a text message or just to your face. So that's the kind of stuff she was dealing with. And I think, I'm positive.
I was going to say, you don't think
Yeah, that she would not still be here had we not taken her out of school. Like, I really believe that in my heart. And I hate to even, like, formulate those words and say them, but, like, I really believe that, like, she was in that bad a shape that, like, her teachers, guidance counselors calling, and it's like, hey, I'm just calling to check on Ayla because this, whatever was going on. I'm like, But I wanted to get her out of that, and I didn't want to let Joseph, our younger son, get into that. He went to pre-K, and then I think he did first grade, pre-K, kindergarten. He came in kind of at the end of pre-K when he finally was able to get in, and then he did kindergarten and first grade, and in second grade he started in homeschool. But, like, I just didn't want him to get, so deep into that nastiness that kids get caught up in school, and it's just awful. And it's not, if your school is made up of only the greatest teachers in the world in every classroom, there's just not enough attention for them to go around and deal with all of those episodes while they're also trying to teach them about the Louisiana Purchase,
Right. And to me, I will give public school a little bit of grace on this when they do teach institutional education, which is that kind of instrumental. Hey, we're going to read this book. We're going to do this. This is this topic. Where homeschooling, we can tie back to what we just did. You get the social, emotional, and psychological development in addition to that, where it's you're seeing homeschool kids who are more likely to succeed in the world. Mm-hmm. They're quite a bit more involved with volunteer.
You could say if you got numbers, I know you get your
I was
cheat
gonna
sheet
say,
over there.
I do have my cheat sheet.
And we'll get into some more statistics as we go, but go ahead.
But it's just the there's research that suggests that homeschool students are less susceptible to abuse, neglect, in anything else. In that, and that's kind of a shout out there is like, hey, if you're homeschooled, you're less likely to become an alcoholic, a drug abuser, all these terrible things, but you're also more politically tolerant, which is something we need in this world right now. Because if you look at our lovely state to the north of Minnesota,
oh, God bless them,
Minneapolis is burning down right now.
Yeah.
And that, to me, a part of that ties into our educational system in preaching intolerance of certain activities, where I look at states that kind of are pro homeschool. A lot of these places,
great, yeah.
Georgia, great for it. We have our moments in our bigger metro cities where they love to push public school. However, when you get out of those big public spheres of kind of information like that,
right,
you get more well-adjusted people who are like, oh yeah, I'll talk to you on any subject, and we can have a conversation. They're tolerant,
right?
So their tolerance for things is just much more developed.
Yeah.
So to me, it's a no-brainer.
but here's the difference, and I know from our experience, and I know obviously a bunch of other homeschool families, we have these conversations with our kids at home, and we talk about what's going on in Minnesota right now, and we talk about what happened, on January 6th when, all that stuff went down at the Capitol, and we talk about what's going on with Israel and Iran, and what about, the black people feel this way about the white people, and the white people think this, and we just talk about this stuff. And it's not like we don't have to like censor the conversation because we might hurt somebody else's feelings in the classroom, or upset the apple cart in some kind of way. Like, we can just have these conversations at our dinner table and talk about awkward things, or things that would be awkward. Our kids don't think they're awkward. That's just the stuff we talk about. But we don't, you don't have to tiptoe, walk on eggshells because you're like, well, let's just say it. And this is what's happening, and this is what's not happening. And,
right. And to me, it may not be the equivalent to everyone, but I know I'm a why person. I want to know why. And public education just doesn't allow you to ask why, because there's just not enough time. When you have 30 students crammed into a tiny box. You don't get to ask those questions when you only get 30 minutes with a child.
Right.
And so a lot of these topics don't get discussed. It's just, let's focus on X, Y, Z. And that kind of hinders it, where your kids can go, hey, what about this? And it kind of implores a more creative way of thinking, and you look at things from a different aspect. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that missing out on those why opportunities may have changed some trajectories of things, but to me, homeschooling is the epitome of why. Is being able to have your kids understand the world. They seem to have a better sense. I know some of my best friends are homeschooled. I've worked with plenty of them. I've still talked with a bunch of them, and they're some of the most educated individuals, but they also understand things better, and they can comprehend and take a moment and really think about it and be like, well, no, what about this? And so that's what piqued my curiosity in homeschooling. So I'm all on board the day I decide to have kids. Like, let's go. We're homeschooling. I'm all for it, because the public education system failed me.
Well, I always felt, I didn't always feel like it did. I just didn't understand, life, I guess, by the time I graduated. And I was like, what am I supposed to do now? And I didn't immediately go to college. Then I had some rotten jobs, and I was like, well, I better go to college. And then college wasn't cool, I didn't feel like it was benefiting me, and nobody told me that my degree field was about to disappear, and, all kinds of stuff. But I was like, I need school. And then I worked in school for a while, and I finally was like, oh, this is what happened to me. Is that nobody was ever like, no, really, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
You just got to figure it out. And that's hard. You can't just, snap your fingers and live your dream. Like there's work involved. And I get to do a bunch of that now, but I'm 47. Like it took me a while to figure out that you can just kind of do some of the things you want with enough work.
And that's kind of the fun is like, Temple always uses the adage of like, you're planting the trees, not for you to be under the shade, but for your kids to live under that shade.
Right.
So you're kind of planting that seed right now for them to grow up and be much further ahead in life and already be on that stepping stone and be like, oh no, I learned this as a 9-year-old.
Right.
I was already here.
Yeah.
Like, holy Moses.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a big deal. And we said this off air. I felt like we taught and are still teaching, for that matter, our kids how to not have to operate within a system.
Yeah,
like
you're
parameters,
not operating within a set parameter of, hey, this is what you do, don't do, ask this.
Right. When we started this business with Ayla, like we created a business where there wasn't one. Like it's a thing that you do. Sort of. There's a little more to it than that, but like that's essentially what you do when you start a business or you start this plan in your life, and you go, well, this I'm creating a thing where there wasn't one, as opposed to just, like you think about teachers that go to school, and then they become teachers, who teach more people who go to school but to become teachers. And you go in this cycle.
Wild.
And God bless them. As long as there are kids that go to public school, we're going to need teachers. So that's that's an important 100%. Thing too. I do want to go back though. We were talking about the calculator a minute ago.
Yeah.
Right. And how if I had a nickel for every one of my teachers that said, you're not always going to have a calculator with you.
Lies.
I don't. My math teacher in 1994 had no way of knowing, right? There was no way that we would know that by 2025 we'll be able to talk to, like, at our phone across the room, like, hey, Siri, answer whatever. Let's see. I don't have my Siri set up. I'm such a boomer. But they didn't know. There was no way for them to know that. If I'd asked my 1994 math teacher, like, do you think I can do a podcast one day?
I was going to tie it back. I'm glad you brought this up. So we've brought this up where recently it was, hey, go start a podcast.
Yeah.
This is part of it.
That was, yeah.
So we hang out too much now.
I know, right?
We're thinking the same thing. We're like, hey, go do the thing.
Yeah.
Go start the podcast.
Yeah.
Because nobody else is. Gosh, it gives you meaning. It helps.
It does. It does. And we're with Wildflower Energy, which is Ayla's business. We're working right now with another homeschool kid who wants to start a bakery. So we're going to get with him and collab and help him build his thing up until he can branch off and get his own place and
yes.
I don't want to say the name yet because I don't want somebody to run off with it before he gets it. But he's got all these ideas, and he's been baking since he could walk, and it's one of those kind of deals. So we're going to work with him, and then, they'll build another business out of the one we've already got, and it's just going to be awesome. But it's just about getting out of the system, man. And there are smart kids in public school that go on to do, wildcat things like starting their own business or, forging their own path through life, whatever it is. But for so many kids, they get that individuality beaten out of them, it seems like. And it's sad to watch.
It is. And it's hard. Again, I don't want to bash public school, but I do. Because, goodness gracious, it really does break you in kind of... It's prison for children. That's about the best summary I can, where you're sent to a small little camp with all these people, and you have your little guards everywhere.
Did you know that the middle school that you attended is the same architectural design as a prison?
I did. I knew that, and I knew there are quite a few of them that base that central hub as a way of looking down hallways.
Yeah,
so you can kind of...
Are all the middle schools in our county that same design? I know at least 2 of them are. I don't know about Pepperell. I don't know their new middle school.
So that was a thought I had early on when I'd first
Yeah.
heard that when I was still in high school. I think I was a freshman, and I was like, this is prison. This is 100% a prison.
We're in jail.
This is a prison, a voluntary prison. This is what you do when you get a DUI and you're like, I'm going to go do my jail for the weekend.
Yeah,
This is what you do. You get sent, you send your kids to, I know I'm flaming public school. I'm sorry, but that's what it is.
Well, but just as long as we're drawing the line between flaming the system and flaming teachers, I don't want to flame teachers.
No, the teachers are great.
Some of them. There's a lot of great teachers. There's some lousy teachers out there, though, and we're seeing more and more of that every day.
But is that
that's
a
not-
product of this lack of individuality and a lack of actual inherent knowledge of the world and not knowing what it is? Like, going back to what you said, it's teachers teaching teachers how to be teachers.
Right.
I mean, you end up in public school. We had literally college teachers' aides who were like, you graduated last year. What the heck are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
Why are you here?
You know what was a major turning point for me? And we're just, we've mentioned Floyd County locally, already in this episode. We used to take, you went, did you ever go to classes at the CCA? Did you have to? Okay. So when...
That is where I got my technical degree.
Right. So you would have classes there, but before that, you would go on a tour.
Yep.
Like your sophomore year or whatever, you'd go on a tour and think about what you might want to take over there. Well, then, we would take the entire 10th grade over there, and everybody got to go see it. Maybe it was 9th grade even. But the entire grade, huge field trip. Everybody went, toured the facility. And then a couple weeks later, I would go with my special ed guys, my higher function special ed guys who were going to be able to go to classes there. And so you go through the facility. This one's going to get me in trouble. But we walk into the construction lab, right? And they're in there teaching you how to frame a house and how to run wiring and plumbing and all that cool stuff. And the guy's talking about all the job opportunities you can get, and you can travel and be a carpenter and a plumber and a welder and do all this stuff. And one of my special ed kids looks at him and goes, well, why aren't you doing that? Right? Tango's jaw hits the floor. And I was like, oh no, like this guy's going to have to answer that question. And I just kind of wait for him to talk. And he's like, well, I just, really like being a teacher. And I'm like, bro, you're making 60 grand over here. And a minute ago, you were telling me we could turn this into 150. And, I finally was like,
all these skills.
Yeah.
You're teaching the kids who are going to have these skills.
Yeah.
But
and I finally was like, hey, we got to go. I let the guy off the hook. But, I was reading a thing the other day before we even had the idea for this episode that was like, I knew I was in trouble when my business teacher had never owned a business.
Oh my gosh, I've heard so many college professors they don't own a business.
Yeah.
What do they know about business besides a book?
Yeah.
But to me, this kind of goes deeper.
Mm-hmm.
This kind of points out some failures in our...
You've never talked this much in an episode before.
I know. The only episodes I talk this much are when I'm in it. This shows me kind of the educational failures in higher education as far as college.
Yeah.
There's a dysfunction there right now. So this may be a learning opportunity for college.
That goes back to what we were just talking about. Academia is behind, and they always will be. They'll be behind the field because, doctors are discovering new things every day, and lawyers are finding new ways to make the argument, and plumbers and pipe fitters and electricians are figuring out new ways to do those jobs. And it's weeks or months or years before that information makes it into a classroom. And then by then, they've already thought of some new thing that will be years before it makes it back into the classroom. And so are you better off learning that in a school, or are you better off going to work with your dad, the electrician, or, the guy down the street, or sometimes with like a homeschool co-op, you'll bring a guy in to talk about that. Like there's 8 of us or whatever in our homeschool co-op, and like, I know this guy's an accountant. Let's get him to come talk to our kids and teach them about, one thing or another. We did a lot of that stuff in classical conversations when Ayla was doing that, who graduated early, by the way. But you had these interactions with these people. And I know one public school teacher who did that at the end of every, I guess she still does, Sarah Severson. I'll say her name. Fantastic teacher. One of the best teachers on the planet. Certainly one of the best that I've ever worked with. She would get through, the stuff that she had to teach for the year. And, by April, May, she's bringing a mechanic out to show the kids in her class how to change a tire. Brought a lady from the bank out to talk about how to come set up a bank account and take out a loan and, get a debit card. And, these people were in her classroom and it was the coolest thing. But that's one teacher in 13 years was doing that stuff. And I don't fault anybody else for not doing that stuff. They got stuff to teach and things to cover. You just don't have those opportunities all the time. But homeschool gives you the flexibility to create those opportunities. If you want to know something, we just go find out. What about dinosaurs? I don't know, man. Let's go to this museum and talk to this paleontologist. Okay, cool. My kids are in Trail Life. And it's a fantastic adventure character leadership organization about, it's the thing we were talking about earlier, building boys into men. There's one of the dads in our group is a doctor. And the other night he gave this presentation about, being sick and first aid and bandaging wounds and adding a splint and doing all these things. So we got that from a doctor. It's not like we had to sit in classrooms and learn this stuff. And there's obviously it was the 30,000 foot view or whatever, but it's you can find these things, especially with the internet and things the way they are. Are you about to leave or okay. So we're learning from this doctor at our Trail Life troop meeting the other night, right? But you have more opportunity to create opportunity, I guess. 16,000 hours is what you get back if you homeschool your kids. You get to have your kids for 16,000 more hours than the parents who send their kids to school. And that's not just public school. That would be private school as well. And there's some merit to private school. I got some numbers on that too, but it's 16,000. How many more things can you teach your kids in 16,000 hours? We talk about them being well-adjusted and, things like that. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means your kids say yes, sir, and no, sir. And, they hold the door for the old lady and stuff like that. But where do they learn those things? They learn them in those 16,000 hours that you have with them when they're doing life with you.
It goes back to kind of I'm going to have to adjust it now. It does. It goes back to those life skills being learned.
Yeah.
You get to pick that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you're in the institution, you kind of have to learn those after the fact.
Right.
And you pointed out a educator a minute ago who kind of taught some of those things to students, and that was fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah. It just, they just don't have that kind of flexibility, but it's, we do in homeschooling. And there are people that are going to be like, well, it's not for everybody. And I don't think that's true. I think it's much harder for some people, but we couldn't homeschool until we could. Like it was hard. We couldn't have lived without my income at a certain point. And we got to a point where we eliminated all of our debt and got our spending under control and stopped wasting money. And then we were able to do without an income. So we ate a lot of beans, a lot of ramen noodles, on our path to being able to homeschool our kids. So it's not like everybody's like, oh, it must be nice. You guys must be rich or whatever. The average homeschool family spends $600 a year on a homeschool kid.
Yeah, that kind of brings me to a point I was thinking.
Tango has joined us on screen, by the way.
I was going to say, I jumped in. Yeah. Yes, that fallacy may have been applicable for homeschooling as far as like, oh, I can't afford it, I can't do it. Mm-hmm. We live in the year 2026 where you can join a homeschool group and you can still be a working adult parent
and
still be part of your normal society and doing your day job.
Yeah.
while your kids are still getting that homeschool education.
Yeah.
And you're able to kind of do after hours.
Yeah.
After hours.
There are groups, man. There are co-ops. There are grandparents and aunts and uncles that get involved and make it. I know parents, families that both parents work and they homeschool. I know single moms that do it.
Almost like, again, going back to a weird fallacy on it. Homeschool kids aren't socialized, but
Stop
it
it.
sounds like it takes a whole community to socialize your kids. And when you're homeschooled, your whole family's involved. Everybody's involved. It's a whole community involvement because you're kind of releasing them into the community. But let's tie back to the money we were talking about. You spend $600 a child a year.
Mm-hmm.
So the number is almost $16,000
$16,000 a year
for
The
a child.
The average, yeah. In public school, the average student is worth they're worth way more than this. We spend about $16,000 a year on public school per student.
If we were to convert that, that's taxpayers are paying roughly $51 billion a year in taxpayer funds for kids to go to public institutions.
Mm-hmm. Including you, who you don't have any kids.
I
at
don't
all.
have kids, but I'm paying part of that $51 billion.
My kids don't go to school, and we're still paying for school, and we're paying the roughly $600 a year for. It's way more than that. But
So we talk about like we get into the weeds sometimes on politics, but that's one of those things. Hey, $600, $51 billion.
yeah,
As a taxpayer, I'm like, that sounds a lot more efficient to me.
Yeah.
Something's saying there's some sort of
I wish
wrong here.
that we had $16,000 a year to spend on our homeschool kids. You know, what kind of
Holy Moses. Holy post Moses Malone. That's a whole heckin' lot of field trips of learning from the dinosaur people.
It is, man. But I don't want other people to pay for my kids' education, though. I just would like a little bit of my money, a little more of my money to be able to go towards it. That'd be super nice. The money follows the kid, and they're not a big fan of that in public school because we end up with all your kids going to private school, and private school don't have to accept any old body.
Right.
So then only the lower functioning, slower learning kids end up in public school, and then they just look awful, and they don't want that.
So if we break down those numbers real quick, your $600 for homeschool, what is that going toward? As far as when you spend that $600, where is that allocated? If you know off the top of your head.
Yeah, well, it just depends, and it's going to vary from family. Say it's only $600 a year. There are families that will spend the entire $600 on a curriculum.
Okay.
There are free curriculums out there, or much lower cost curriculums, and you're going to spend that $600 on field trips or supplemental materials, or, we're into books. Jessica is doing a Charlotte Mason program with the kids, and it's about living books, they call them, where everything's based on stuff you read. So we're always looking for this book or that book or, whatever. And she'll find them at thrift stores, and, we'll order them. Sometimes you got to buy one new or whatever. So sometimes that's where your money goes. Pencil, paper, paint, scissors,
Okay.
School stuff.
Okay. So when I'm hearing the $16,000 number that me, the taxpayer, is paying, I'm not paying for things for that student. I'm paying for a brick and mortar prison. I'm paying for teachers, their salaries. I'm paying for the lights to be on the water. Mm-hmm. So I'm paying for a lot of extra little things that isn't really actually benefiting my child. Ooh.
Yeah, so
your $600 is invested directly into and you're
right
actually spending more money than that.
Right.
Fun fact: when you have public educated kids, you're spending more than that $16,000 because You got to buy them a new backpack. You got to buy them all the school supplies because, ooh, sorry.
Because that doesn't come from the $16,000.
No,
it comes from mom and dad.
Your $16,000 is paying that principal his $180,000 salary a year. To sit in an office. Sucks. Paying for a guidance counselor who you may or may not ever see. That hurts. That's not me flaming them, but it's just me saying there's some redundancies and like some spending here that doesn't add up, and the math ain't math. And holy Moses, man, this is rough.
Well, that's and so if I had $16,000, my kids would bring in $48,000 to our house to focus. And if there was a law that said you can only spend it on their education, I'm like, okay, cool. We would fly to the Cosmosphere in Hutchinson, Kansas tomorrow.
Heck yeah, dude. That may be the best education you could ever give your child.
Yeah.
Like there's no amount of private school that would ever allow that. Granted, we do have a private school here in our county that is pretty ritzy, but goodness gracious, 16 grand would that's a whole lot of education.
Yeah.
And a whole lot that you're investing in your child. And that's kind of what I see out of homeschooling is you, the parent, want to invest in your child, in their future, and making sure that, you know what, I want to give them the absolute best. And I get it. Some people can't do that. But again, we're in 2025 where you can join these communities and kind of develop that sense of community with each other.
We started homeschooling during COVID. Yeah. And these museums and things were not available. And we used a free curriculum our first year. And it was good enough. I mean, we got it done, and we found ways. The internet is an amazing tool. This was before, AI really even took off. But we would find, all sorts of things to get into. And the Great White Shark Conservancy Center was a big deal that we got into. Where when school was out during COVID, they were like, hey, we're going to start offering stuff for kids, online. And they would go live on Facebook and talk about sharks and, stingrays and whatever. So we would tune in at 1:30 Eastern time every day and watch these presentations. And so that was what homeschool looked like then. And to some degree, still does now, I'm sure, for a lot of folks every day. You just find these things. Like the entirety of human knowledge is on the internet. You can find it, or the internet will tell you where to go find it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's just out there, and it's not a Becca curriculum is great. It's super expensive. I wish we could afford it, and we would, but you don't need it. It makes it easier if you just got it all in your lap, but it's out there. You just go find it.
So here's another question. Do you feel like your kids are living a healthier life in homeschool education, or being homeschooled rather than being kind of in a public school? Because that's another topic that kind of comes to the top is are your kids actually healthy? Are you getting real food? Are you getting actual sunlight? Are you getting the vitamins, minerals, everything you need to actually be a functioning human being? Or are you kind of in a white box where they feed you mystery meat?
Yeah.
But
so Jessica is in this program that's called 1,000 Hours Outside.
Okay.
So within a calendar year, your goal is to spend 1,000 hours outdoors. So, nobody just goes out, and little kids especially aren't just going outside and sitting. Right? Like my kids have got a climbing dome in the backyard, and their granddad just built them this castle thing with climbing ropes and swings and slides, and and we got chickens, and they chase the chickens around the yard, and they go, we hike, we camp, all the things, because we're logging, 1,000 hours outside out of 365 days is in the ballpark of 3 hours a day anyway. But then sometimes it rains, or it's just too doggone hot in July in Georgia to be outside. So you got to end up, you don't go outside at all one day. So that means you got to do 6 hours some other day, or 7 or 9 or, whatever. But the idea is to get out there and be outside and drink out of the creek or whatever. But, in that, I think there's a healthier lifestyle. I also think that, so the common denominator, the thing that I've noticed, there are single moms that do it and there are grandparents that help out with it. But by and large, these homeschool families are 2-parent households.
Oh.
Yeah, right?
Well-adjusted
yeah.
parents.
Yeah. So they're both involved and they're, I don't know, there are some people that probably aren't healthy in that. But by and large, I think that's a community where people are more conscious of their health.
Okay.
And things of that nature. But I do feel like our kids, like I talked about Ayla earlier, I don't think Ayla would still be here if we had left her in school.
So that ties back to that mental health aspect of like the psychology of like where homeschooling kind of beats out institutional education.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. Just when would you ever spend 3 hours if you weren't on the football team? You know, that you went to practice every day after school. Like, when does a kid go outside for
after elementary school?
3-ish hours a day.
I mean, you didn't get 3 hours in elementary school either. You get 30 minutes outside to an hour, maybe an hour, maybe.
And then this time of year, the sun sets at 5, so you go home, and if you run right off the bus out to your backyard and start playing, you got like an hour and a half.
Yeah, and sometimes it's freaking cold.
Yeah, it is, or it's raining or whatever.
Yeah,
but
we're in the wintertime, so it's a little rough, and then summertime it's hotter than Hades.
Yeah,
but like, yeah, that 3 hours a day is kind of a life-changing thing.
Yeah, it really is.
Oh.
It is, and we intentionally do that with other kids, with other people. Because what's the question? What's the thing that I'm not expecting you to know this answer because you're not a homeschool parent.
Are your kids weird?
Yeah. How you going to socialize them kids? That's what people always want to know.
Turns out.
It's the dumbest thing. I'm sorry. It's an ignorant thing. and let's talk about that some. So socialization. In a week's time, my homeschool kids, and so many other kids that I know, but specifically my kids will go to church. They'll go to jiu-jitsu. They'll go to dance. Ayla's at dance right now. They'll go to piano. They got a Lego club. They've got an art class. They go to a zoo class at the Chattanooga Zoo where they learn about animals and, animal science of all sorts. There are other kids who do chorus and band. And Ayla did mock trial. Like there are so many things out there which just foster a social environment because you're not just doing this by yourself. People that are doing homeschool, the wrap on homeschool is that you sit at your kitchen table all day long with your books and you just do school just like you would be doing it. And that was the first thing I learned coming out of public education, going into home education, was that it was not the same. And I could not make my kids sit at a table and raise their hand and ask me a question because it just didn't work in that environment. But you find other kids to do these things with, and you go to these clubs and these classes and these events, and that is your socialization. Kids naturally socialize, especially little kids. They want to play. Well, it's not fun to play by yourself. You want to play with somebody else. So you make friends at the park, and you go down the slide together, and you do all the things, and then you're growing up with these people.
So what it sounds like is you just kind of debunk that myth of the stereotype of homeschoolers who, wildly enough, statistically, they show higher levels of social and emotional development through homeschooling.
Yeah. And we're going to talk numbers and things in this episode, but what I want you, the listener, to do is look this stuff up for yourself. Don't take my word for it. And, everybody thinks what they think. Until something changes your mind. And I hope that's what that does. And I don't want to just dump on, public school as a whole. I want to debunk some of these misconceptions. And I hate the word misinformation because it gets misused so many times.
It's debunking some of the myths and kind of setting the record straight because there's been a propaganda campaign against homeschooling.
Yeah.
That is kind of the world we live in where it's been preached to you that if you're homeschooled, you're a weird kid. You're not going to have the social response to people. You're not going to get into college. You're not going to be able to be a functioning human being. Turns out all that's kind of wrong.
Yeah.
And kind of talking with you earlier before we even started rolling, you kind of opened my eyes to a couple of more things. Like, I was like, holy smokes. That's a new fact I didn't know, and I normally stay up to date on my statistics and facts.
Pretty knowledgeable about a lot of these things yourself.
I am.
But let's go back. I mentioned Dr. Glenn White earlier, and his. It was irresponsible for him to say that because he spoke from ignorance, and he just shouldn't have. But his and so many other people's experience with homeschool. I talk about this off air. I don't want to say this again. You have to watch the episode now and see his experience with homeschool, right? And I know that because I had this experience with him when he was the principal, before he was the superintendent. There were kids that stayed in trouble, and they would say, you know what, I'm going to go homeschool because I don't want to be, held down by the man or whatever. And these kids would go home and they'd sit on the couch for a few months. And they wouldn't do anything. There was no schooling going on. And they'd come back 3 or 4, 6 months later. And of course, they're behind the rest of their class because they hadn't been in school in 6 months. So then he sees this kid and he goes, yeah, homeschooling failed. Well, like, homeschooling was never attempted. That's not homeschooling. If you're not teaching your kids, that's not school. That's not learning. That's not education, right? If you're just letting your kids sit on the couch and chill and, scroll through Instagram reels or whatever it is, that's not what homeschool is. None of us would say, yeah, that's homeschool. That's not even bad homeschool. That's not homeschool at all.
There's a word for that, and it's called neglect.
Yes. Yeah. And they'll come to your house and investigate you. Like, you can't.
Turns out that's bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's where all this came from. There's a new, compulsory education attendance law here in Georgia. And the way that homeschool people get around that, I say get around that, the law provides for homeschooling here in Georgia. And Georgia's a fantastic place to homeschool. So what you do is you register with the Department of Education, which is a part that I don't like this at all. I hate that we have to do this, but it is what it is. We file a declaration of intent every single year to homeschool our kids, and we list our school year start date and our school year end date. And for us, our school year start date is August 1st, and our school year end date is July 31st. Now, I know what you might be thinking. School is 180 days, and that's 365 days. And you would be correct. So now we have the opportunity to do school, whatever school looks like for the individual homeschool family, 365 times a year, right? So we don't have to do it every day, or we can do it every day. There are Sundays we come home from church and Jessica's like, hey, let's do the ABCs or the 1, 2, 3s or the practice writing this or that or whatever it is for 30 minutes or whatever. Or sometimes the kids ask for it. Hey, let's do a writing sheet. We're like, I'm never going to tell you no.
So it sounds like as a homeschool family, you guys are getting more attention to the education and having more time to spend on it.
Mm-hmm.
Because while, yes, you are having to make that declaration to the education people, the lovely Department of Education.
God bless them.
Public school, again, 180 days. That ties back to that 16,000 hours. What can you really do with that? That's a lot of time.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's the 16,000 hours on top of the rest of the time that, from 3 to bedtime every night that other families get with their kids. Like, you get that time too. This is just 16,000 additional hours. And you can use that, however you want. If you think about, remember being in school, and we'll start with second period, right? Bell rings at the end of first period. You got 5 minutes to get to second period. What happens in the first 5 minutes of class?
Absolutely nothing. Just people sitting down, talking, doing whatever.
Right.
Da-da-da-da-da-da. Half the time I didn't show up.
Yeah. So when you were there, what happens in the last 5 minutes of class?
The same thing. Everybody's already packing their stuff up.
Right.
Here, let me put my books away. We're done. We're wrapping things up. It's like, okay, it's So you're losing that time.
Yeah. So you've lost 10 minutes out of
15 minutes.
50 minutes. Yeah, 10, 15 minutes. And not to mention every time the teacher's got to come by and go, hey, Tango, you need to wake up and do this, and it might be you or the other kid going, hey, stop talking or, whatever. Please don't throw that. So you lose all that time and you end up, that's what people say. You're like, how you done with the homeschool? Because if we just sit down and we want to bang out like an entire day of homeschooling, it's a couple, 3-4 hours.
Yeah.
But you cut out all that time, all the 5 minutes in between classes and the dead time at the beginning and at the end and the behavior problems. And we have our share of behavior problems, but it just factors into the entire day.
Talk about efficiencies and things like that. Holy Moses. That is kind of the way of like you're building little children of like to be part of the STEM program at this point to say, hey, you're part of this efficient programming of like, hey, we're in lean education. I know you come from kind of the academia side, but I come from like a manufacturing side where lean manufacturing is the thing of like, hey, this is the way the world is now.
Yeah.
So we got to get leaner, more efficient. Homeschooling is kind of that. You're able to accomplish so much more, so much less time.
Yeah. Well, and when we have our behavior problems, it's 2 kids.
Yeah, you're not dealing with 30 and you're not having to kind of do riot control and be like, okay, let me go call somebody to pull this kid out.
Right.
I can kind of handle this situation and kind of elaborate on why that's not okay, why that was bad, why. And you kind of get to answer those questions of why when, again, public education, you don't. It's, hey, Tango, you're going straight to ISS. Oh, okay.
Sleep in there too.
Let me go to the hole.
Yeah. But yeah, we get to use all the time. So we can wake up first thing in the morning and start school, or we can do it in the couple hours before bedtime, or we can not today because maybe mommy's a little bit sick or one of the boys is sick or, or whatever, got a doctor's appointment or whatever. We don't lose time because we miss a day. We just do it later. Or we do, twice as much one day because we know we have a thing tomorrow or whatever it is. It's just that flexibility that you don't have anywhere else. And you get more time with your kid and you get a better relationship with your kid, and it helps to be with other kids who have better relationships with their parents. And you get to pick too who your kids are around. You get to decide. And if you get into a group and you don't like it and it's not for your kid, you take them out. You don't go to that group anymore. You go to a different group. You find one that's doing, or you start your own. We've done that 3 different times. You go, well, we'll start our own thing. A forest school or, some kind of a reading club or a poetry club or any of the things you want to get into. If it's not out there and it's not available for you, just start it. There are people who are looking for it and they'll gladly join you that without fail. Just a matter of coming up with the idea. Being like, hey, let's do this together. Okay, cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I think I have a follow-up for you because you've done this. Maybe not a question. This would be, how would you debunk the myth that homeschool kids are further behind in education as far as versus public school? Because I know that's one of the common things is, oh, no, you're homeschooled. Oh, your kids must be stupid. Fun fact, it's actually not.
Yeah.
We'll actually debunk that too.
Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of get your input on that.
I always like to ask, behind what?
Yeah.
Behind who? Who are we behind? Are there kids out there smarter than mine? 100% there are. My kids are probably behind those kids. If we're doing the exact same curriculum, my kids will be behind those kids every day of the week. But my kids are 0% behind my kids. You know what I mean? They're where they need to be. And if we see that they're super proficient in an area, we move on. And if they need a little more time on a concept, we stay with it a little bit longer. And sometimes we, go rocket shot through an entire curriculum, like a class, and we knock out all of our writing for this semester. And like, we're done with that. We should still practice, but we're done with new information for this semester or this division of time, however we feel like splitting it up. But there's no behind. There's no ahead. You just are where you are. And we don't have to measure ourselves against the highest functioning learner or the lowest functioning learner in the classroom. We're the only one there.
So if we want to look on it on like a granular numbers level, how do you feel that stacks up as far as like where do homeschoolers land as far as versus normal public education?
Well, I have some statistics.
This is what I like. I like numbers.
Yeah. Okay. So I've got like a list here, and we'll start at the top of these. So there are 60 million, roughly 60 million kindergarten through 12th grade school age kids in the United States. 50 million of them are public schooled. 4.7 million of them are private schooled.
Okay.
3.7 million, some estimates as high as 4 million are homeschooled. So this is not like, we're right there behind private school in terms of overall numbers. So this is not like a fringe thing anymore, especially after COVID. Before COVID, we were at like 2%, and now we're pushing, 4%, and some estimates even as high as 4.5 or 5.
I feel like we need to take homeschool back and be like, hey, look, this isn't grandma's homeschool. This is modern actual schooling, actual learning, actual academia.
Yeah.
So that's a incredible statistic. I did not know how close to private school.
Yeah, no, we're right there with them as far as that goes. There are some estimates that put us, neck and neck as far as percentage wise. Average standardized test scores.
Okay.
We'll look at all three. We'll look at homeschool, private school, and public school. Public school, they average 50th to 60th percentile in standardized test scores. Private schools, 75 to 80%. Homeschool, 85 to 90%. So as many as, as much as twice as high, as public school kids on standardized tests. If you put them on the same, the SAT, ACT, whatever it is, public school, homeschool kids are just doing better.
So I got a fun fact on that one.
Go for it.
The average SAT score for a homeschooler is higher than that of a public schooler.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, they score an 1190 on average versus a 1060.
1060. I think that's what my brother got was a 1060.
And the
God bless
ACT, where it is a 26.5 versus a 21.
Mm-hmm. That's a thing, man. I'm glad you pulled that up because I was just looking at percentiles. In terms of college acceptance, homeschoolers are right behind private school. Well, it maybe even. Private schoolers get into college at 90 to 95%. Homeschoolers get in at 85 to 90%, and then public schoolers get in at 60 to 75%.
Yep. Fun fact on this one, homeschoolers, their first year GPA is actually a 3.41 versus a 3.12. And a 4-year graduate rate for homeschool versus public school, 66.7% more likely to graduate than your public school counterparts, who are at a 57.5% rate of graduation.
Wow.
So, what does that tell you?
Well, it tells you a lot, really. I mean, there's a bunch of things you could dive into there. But it's a different world. It's a different playing field. Graduation rates are higher. All those things. I hear that it's harder for homeschool kids to get into college, and some colleges don't even take homeschool kids. And I've been researching this all week long, and I could not find a college that doesn't accept homeschool kids.
Myth busted.
Yeah,
actually, colleges love homeschool kids.
They do. There are 2 colleges here locally with us. We've got Shorter University, and Berry College, and they both have campus tours that are tailored to homeschool kids. Like, it's a thing that they do. The provost at Shorter University, they homeschool their kids. So, that's kind of near and dear to their heart. But and the kid I talked about earlier, and he's just one example, but he's not only is he in college, he's a college athlete. There was a guy, what's his name? He was a homeschool guy. There was a famous football player, quarterback, loved Jesus, Tim Tebow. That's his name. Homeschool kid. So you can do all the things even as a homeschool kid. Go to college, play sports, all that fun stuff.
You can get a Heisman and go play pro ball.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Go Tim Tebow.
So those are the numbers, and again, I don't want you to take my word for these things. I always said, preaching a sermon, please don't take my word for it. Look it up yourself and do your own work. So I kind of want to apply that here. Dig into these numbers for yourself and find out, did this guy just sit here for an hour and 11 minutes and tell a bunch of lies to make himself feel better about homeschooling his kids? Well, find out for yourself. It's out there. We found it.
Yeah. I mean, this is one of those episodes where we got to do a deep dive on a topic that we were kind of, as far as me, I was like, oh, I'm okay with this. Like homeschooling is definitely the way to go. That I'm looking at, because efficiency wise from that. What is the average college degree that they leave with? Or
That's
do you
a
know
good
that?
question. I don't know.
It is a field of STEM that homeschoolers are most likely to leave out of.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think you gave me a cool fact earlier. What are the three what is it? Yeah, let's drop that, because
this is
two of those are STEM related.
Yeah. So the three fields that generate the most millionaires, the top 3 millionaire generating fields are engineers, number 1. Number 2 is accounting. And number 3 is teaching. Public school teachers rank in the top 3 among careers that create millionaires, which is interesting because the median income for a school teacher is $61,000, which is not that much in terms of, building $1 million worth of wealth. But their retirement is fantastic, and I know that because I'm in it. I'm in that system because I paid into it for 13 years. I've moved it all over now, but I've seen it, and I know teachers who have retired with a net worth of $1 million or more, for the most part, much more. So they got that going for them. So I don't want to hear you guys complain about money anymore. Just stop wasting so much of it. But I would say that to anybody, right? Anybody can do well with less than you think if you just don't spend as much as you think you ought to spend a lot of times. And that's what we did. We don't get by. I just put it out here for the whole doggone world to hear. My annual household income, it's not $100,000. It's probably not $80,000. I bet we're in the 70 range between my wife and I, who, she works a couple times a month. So you can do it. We don't have a huge house. We live in a 1,300 square foot house. I drive a 14-year-old truck. My wife drives a 15-year-old car. You just do the things you have to do to make it happen.
So that kind of goes back to debunking that myth of, you got to be rich, you got to be successful to homeschool
must
your
be
kids.
Nice.
Yeah, that must be nice. No.
No, all them ramen noodles we ate were not nice.
But I think the involvement in your child's developing years, because again, their brains aren't done growing until 25, 24.
And the males especially,
yeah. So those are kind of important, vital years of development as
formative,
far as
they call it,
yeah, your formative years of learning how the world functions. And it kind of reminds me, we were talking off air, and I won't say names, but there's a friend group of mine, and 3 of us don't really have college degrees. One of us does.
Yeah.
We're not going to flame him, but the 3 of us are doing a lot better off, but we were also terrible in a public school setting as far as
You guys were rotten students.
We were terrible at it because like we didn't get the attention we needed. And had we gone to like a homeschool look, I think we would have been a lot better off.
If the four of you guys had been in the same homeschool group, y'all would have crushed it.
Oh, absolutely.
Y'all would have you just knocked it out of the park. It would have been fantastic.
And I love, like, we have a chat. We won't name it, but like we talk to each other all the time, and it's like, bro, this is what we're doing now. This is how the world works.
Yeah, now
there are no rules. We're adults.
Yeah.
And we kind of get to live that life like we wanted to, and I know we credit a lot of it to you guys because you guys let us do that. I know I grew up with you kind of in that mentor figure role where you kind of got to be like, hey, you were doing this homeschooling thing before you knew it.
Yeah,
Fun
I guess
fact.
so. Yeah. How about
As
that?
we wrap this up, I kind of get to give you some kudos and pats on the back. You definitely got to teach me a lot of things kind of growing up out of the life and choices. And I got to see some of that, which is a fun topic on homeschooling is homeschoolers are more likely to be involved in your community, volunteer positions. Again, they're more involved in church, just in general, which is something we as a country need also.
Yeah.
Church. Go to church.
It's a good thing.
Get your kids involved, but funny enough, like homeschooling, you kind of make those connections and like it draws you closer in. So I really appreciate that about it, and it really kind of hones those skills of like being a young adult, being secure, being able to go into the world and take on things and not be scared and not be that deer in the headlights of, oh crap, what do I do now?
Yeah.
I'm not prepared for this. I was prepared to sit here and write math problems out.
You know what I noticed as we got in, we got to wrap this up. We're almost out of time. But what I noticed in public speaking, more people are afraid of public speaking than death itself.
Yeah.
But what I've noticed in these homeschool circles is these kids aren't afraid of public speaking.
No.
And that's huge. It's a huge thing. But that just kind of lets you know where the homeschool kid is. You know, somebody that'll get up and address a room full of adults.
Yeah.
And, you know, at a thing like a mock trial or something like that. They'll do it. They're bold. They're brave. They're smart. They are successful. They're all the things. And not that, you know, there are not public school kids that do those same things, man, but seems like they're the exception a lot of times rather than the rule that's, you know, in homeschool. That's just the way the kid is. So all that said, I hope we didn't, you know, burn too many bridges or whatever. I really wanted to just dispel a lot of ignorance and, you know, misconceptions and things like that. I wanted to fill a lot of those gaps in. And if I made some folks mad, then start your own podcast and flame me. The best part is that Glenn White will probably never know that we addressed him on this episode, and certainly not anything we'd say about him on social media. I'll never have social media. I love the guy. I really do. I still tell people he was the best boss I ever worked for. I felt like everything he did, even if I thought it was a mistake, I knew that he felt like he was doing it for what was in the best interest of the kids. Where I differ from him on this is that I feel like he was doing what's in the best interest of the institution. And after 30 years in the institution, I get it. That's just what he does. But he's a big boy and he can take it. And I'd say all these things to his face because I love him. But we got to jump off because this thing's just going to go black in a minute.
Yeah, I was going to tie one more thing in.
We got 12 minutes. Go ahead.
Yeah, we got no, because we were talking about like well-adjusted adults, and I was like, okay, well, you said Tebow, but like who else is there? So, wildly enough, Teddy Roosevelt, 26th president of the United States, was tutored at home during his childhood, which means he basically was homeschooled.
Yeah.
Franklin D. Roosevelt, same thing.
Delano.
Yeah. Albert Einstein actually struggled in traditional education and had to be homeschooled.
Hold him down, man.
Yeah. So Einstein, wildly enough, great guy, actually terrible dude. Thomas Edison
Ha!
was homeschooled.
Yeah.
But
Not a nice guy.
same thing as Alexander Graham Bell. So, but we look at these guys who are massive figures in like science and innovation, but then we can look kind of to the art side. You end up with your Taylor Swifts, your J.R. Tolkien.
Tolkien.
Yeah, the Lord of the Rings guy.
Makes sense.
Your
Mr. Hobbit himself.
Yeah.
All right.
Wildly enough, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
You know, you're getting
Was
kind of far back now.
But he was still taught at home,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
in theory.
But that
but
used
like,
to just be the thing. Like, this is a new thing. We didn't start doing school the way we do it until, last
institutionalized
150 years or so, maybe.
But I think right now, kind of a big one that stands out as a civil rights activist is Susan B. Anthony.
How about that?
Was actually homeschooled. So that tells me that a lot of those myths of, if you're homeschooled, you won't succeed. I got presidents,
perfectly
megastars, everybody.
Yeah.
So, again, as Danny said, go do the education. Don't believe us on it.
Yeah, look it up.
Go read it up.
Look it up on the Department of Education website. You can go there. Start with that and branch out. You can go to all kinds of places.
Statistics are there.
Yeah. Well, we really are going to jump off now, unless you got anything else.
That's it.
Nothing else. All right, cool. Thank you guys for sticking around. You've been here for over an hour now, and we're grateful for all of you. Wherever you're watching, especially if you're on YouTube, smash that like button. Share the show with everyone. I'm going to stop saying that. I got to think of my own thing. I can't just rip pool off every night. But thank you guys. You're the reason that we do this. We hope that you are informed, educated, inspired in some way or another. And we hope you come back and listen to us again in the future. God bless you guys. We love you. See you next time.